Ladies and gentlemen, I know I've been waiting for this one for a while. I know Kyle's been waiting on this one for a while.
Oh, mama, give it to me.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Boys and girls, children of hopefully over 13-year-old ages.
Yeah, I mean, I edit out the bad words, but still, if you're going to watch this movie, you need to be older.
Yeah, you do, and though it's much more PG, it loses the panache of, to quote Calvin Candy, of our first few episodes, where
That's true.
just threw in profanity to describe the Roman Empire, and I stand by that strategy. But Dustin told me to calm down, so here we are. I no longer caffeinate right before I do the podcast.
I don't think you got bad until Oppenheimer, and
Oppenheimer was rough, man.
You dropped bombs in Oppenheimer, and I was like, Kyle, I don't know what you're doing, man.
Dropped the bomb. I am death,
like 8 times.
Destroyer of ears. Okay,
destroyer of innocence.
Destroyer of innocence.
Speaking of destroying innocence,
speaking of words that start with an F.
Kyle, and a U. My goodness. And I only have 4 letters.
Wow.
All right. What are we talking about today?
We are talking about the amazing, the tubular, the totally excellent World War II tank movie, Fury. Dun, dun, dun.
Bill and Ted has left a lasting impact on us.
Yeah, we'll never be the same, and probably not for the better either.
No. We should just quit. We're ruined. 2014, a decade since this movie came out.
Why must you say these things?
I keep trying to remember who I watched this with. I don't know who I watched this with. I asked my dad. He said it wasn't him. So it must have been a girl. But
what a date movie.
But I don't remember who it was. But I will tell you that I remember loving this when I watched it in theaters. And considering I remember watching this in theaters and I don't remember the girl that I was watching it with, just shows you how great this movie is.
That says a lot.
Because I should point out that I was 16 when this came out.
That says a lot. I watched it for the first time with my dad. I had vaguely heard that this movie was a thing that was going to happen. And its claim to fame was something we'll talk about later. That was the only reason I knew it was a thing. And my dad pulled me aside on a random Saturday back when the Palace movie theater was still a movie theater and not a mega church.
I missed the Palace.
Oh, me too, man. We have enough churches. We don't have enough movie
churches.
Theaters. Come
Why?
on, guys. That's like replacing an Italian restaurant with a Chinese restaurant. We have enough churches. We have enough Chinese food. Let's get some more culture in this place. Anyway, we went to see it, and I kid you not, within 5 minutes, nobody spoke. If I thought it was biologically possible, nobody breathed. And when it was over, we all got up and silently left the theater, but in a good way, in a reverent, I just watched Platoon for the first time sort of way.
Right. I'm never going to be the same after I watch this movie. Speaking of how great this movie is and how much of an impact it had on both of us the first time we watched it, not a single Oscar nomination. 2015 Best Picture goes to Birdman, starring Michael Keaton. This is why you don't invite hipsters to your award shows.
This is why.
Birdman sucks.
This is why.
If you like it more than you like Fury, you're wrong. Rotten Tomatoes, for some reason, critics gave us a 76. Are we watching the same movie?
Man, critics, dude.
Are we watching the same movie? What? Hold on. What? What more do you want from a movie? What else do you want? I don't understand.
And I mean, that's not even just me loving this movie, because I love The Last Samurai and I can point out the holes in The Last Samurai. This movie is just so, it's what a gritty war movie should be. It's not overly deep and dark and awful, but it doesn't shy away from it either.
Yeah. The audience doesn't give it too much more. So it's a 76 for critics and only an 84 for audience. You're wrong, audience.
Which,
and
I mean,
objectively
is both really high, but not high enough, guys. Come on.
Not nearly high enough. IMDb 7.6. It's IMDb. What do you expect?
I mean, yeah.
It did open at number 1. Made $211 million at the box office on an $80 million budget.
And again, for as unknown as this movie kind of was, it kind of snuck in there. So
released at number 1. 1 week later, no longer number 1 because a certain 2014 action movie released. You know what it is?
2014 action.
We just talked about it.
Is it John Wick?
Ago. It's John Wick. The first John Wick opened 1 week after Fury.
I mean, I don't think it should have beaten it, but that's a worthy contender.
No, I think Fury is a better movie, but I will acknowledge
John Wick's a bigger box office hit.
Yes, John Wick is a bigger movie. This is directed by David Ayer, who also directed the bad Suicide Squad in 2016, and the unfinishable Netflix movie Bright in 2017, starring Chris Rock slapper himself, Will Smith. Not sure what happened here, because prior to this, he had directed End of Watch and Sabotage. End of Watch is pretty good. It's interesting.
End of Watch is solid.
Sabotage is not great. It's an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie in 2013 or something like that. So anyways, as a writer, he wrote the original Fast and Furious, and he wrote Training Day with Denzel Washington and Ethan Hawke.
That explains so
Classic.
much.
Classic.
That explains so much.
So maybe he's better at writing than directing. I don't know. But
King Kong ain't got nothing on me.
Right. Yeah. He wrote that line. So, or unless it was improvised, I don't know. But I'm assuming he wrote that line.
D-Wash could do it, man.
He could. D-Wash. Never heard never heard anyone call him D-Wash. So, before we even get started here, before we even start seeing anything, there's a couple little lines that come across like a static, or not a static, that come across like a radio here. Mm-hmm. Sergeant Humphrey just showed up, and the 88 is in that church. And do either of these things mean anything?
It's just, it really, the 88 in the church means something, and I'll get that. Sergeant Humphrey, everybody in charge of a tank is a sergeant, unless they're a lieutenant or a captain. But generally speaking, everybody in charge of a tank is a sergeant. Sergeant Humphrey just showed up, is reinforcements are here, is really what that's supposed to mean. Okay. And it's just supposed to emphasize the chaos of armored mechanized warfare in a time where communication and mechanics are just barely advanced enough to accomplish it. The 88 is in the church. This is an important thing that people just need to know going in. An 88, or a Kraut 88, or a Kraut high velocity gun, as they call it in the movie a couple times, is a anti-aircraft gun. So an anti-aircraft, high velocity, high explosive gun that the Germans found out really, really early in the North African campaign. They could point horizontal, and it fires super, super fast, almost silent except for the whistle artillery shots, and will just decapitate a tank. Oof. Because it's designed to penetrate planes at 10, 15,000 feet in the air. So you turn it on its side, and instead of a shrapnel round, you put a armor-piercing round in it, like an 88 millimeter wide, so a 3.5-inch wide armor-piercing round in it, and that thing will blow a Sherman or a Challenger tank to Timbuktu. And you won't know where it's at because it can shoot like 10,000 feet if it has line of sight. How would you hit a plane with that gun? That seems very challenging. Well, okay, so the thing is, it's not, this is what makes a Flak 88 terrifying. It's not a one gun to one plane gun, because that's not how anti-aircraft works. It's a scatter shot. So they have 100, 150 of them all together. They fire shrapnel up in the same pattern, because you can see the planes coming and you know that they're coming. You can hear them if there's, 900 B-17s or Lancaster bombers coming at you. And you just fire flak up like shooting giant shotgun shells. And you just hope that you critically hit something.
Holy cow.
Tanks you can see. Your gun has a flat trajectory because it's an anti-aircraft gun, so you don't even have to account for the arc. You point your Flak 88 at the tank, and you pull the trigger.
Is it an actual trigger?
I mean, it's a lanyard, but point being, it's
cool,
like
man.
it's a tank sniper gun. Like, it's literally like a Barrett 50 cal to a human is what a Flak 88 is to a Sherman tank.
Wow.
They're terrifying.
I'm terrified.
They're terrifying enough that in later designs of German tanks, which we'll talk about later, they put artillery equivalents of Flak 88s in the tanks.
So to start us off, like I said, we had a little bit of audio, but we're going to get some words here too. I love reading in my movies. April 1945. Hitler declares total war while Allied troops stomp through the broken German country. That last part wasn't part of the words. I added that because I like putting some panache in it. Across the depleted, mashed landscape, a lone German officer rides horseback past several immobile and abandoned tanks. Mm. That is until he reaches a tank that is not immobile nor abandoned. Interesting analogy here for the movie as a whole, as the first kill is by hand and with a knife rather than the tank, showing the humanity hidden beneath the metal walls.
Behind every trigger, there is a finger, you know?
Exactly. Much like the journey this film will take us on and the characters we will take this journey with. let's talk about our cast, man, because we're going to meet them right out the front, or right out the gate here.
Oh.
The cast underwent a month-long training with a final test of manning a real tank, which Michael Pena actually drove throughout production.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we got Brad Pitt. Everybody knows Brad Pitt. Don War Daddy Collier. I don't know if they even say his last name in the movie. Doesn't matter. He's also called Top quite a few times. Do you have any idea how old Brad Pitt was during this movie?
Isn't he like 45?
50.
Holy
My man was
crap.
50. My man's 60 now.
Dude.
That doesn't seem possible.
Doesn't seem right, but okay.
Shia LaBeouf, also in this. Boyd Bible Swan.
Dude, and he brings it. And this is like right at the end of his banned from Hollywood thing. He wasn't really banned, but this is like the movie that got him out of the blacklisting, I think, if I remember my time frame right.
I think that, yeah, this was right as he was starting to lose it. And this is his best role. Is there an argument? I can't think of anything that even comes close. Shia LaBeouf, man, in this movie.
Oh my gosh.
Brad Pitt's one of my favorite actors. Brad Pitt does a great job in this. Shia LaBeouf steals the show.
He does. He just brings so much. He's so peaceful, but in a chaotic, like I'm breaking inside sort of way. Manufactured peace. He nails the manufactured peace that his character brings, which is I am broken to pieces and I will never recover. But for the sake of the rest of the tank, I'm going to be the rock in the storm, you know?
Shia LaBeouf, during production, there's a cut on his face. It's real, and it's self-inflicted as many times as he needed throughout production to keep this wound on his face. He also, allegedly, pulled out his own tooth and did not shower throughout the entirety of production.
Dude's a wingnut, but he's a committed wingnut.
I think the only one that rivals him acting-wise here is John Bernthal.
Oh my gosh.
Who plays Grady Coon-ass Travis.
The most unlikable human being you will ever find that isn't a straight-up murdering sociopath.
This guy, he's compared to a dog early on, and that's exactly how it seems. He's a savage, lost dog who will bite anything that comes near, yet he is a likable character.
Yeah, he is.
In the most unexplainable way.
I have a headcanon theory about him. I think that he was the nicest, sweetest, most honest one of the group, and I think that's why he's so much more broken. I think that because he's a mechanic and he's from northern Georgia, and it just strikes me that he's either already a jerk, which maybe, or he's a really nice, go out of your way to help each other sort of guy, and when he gets thrown into the cauldron of war, his brain can't take it, and he just breaks apart at the seams.
Yeah. I can see that. I can see him being the one who was. He
could also just be the dick who was always a dick and likes killing people just a little too much. Like
I don't think he gets enjoyment out of it. If anything, I think he's the one who enjoys it the least. I think he's the one who's the most scared once we get to the end of the movie. And I think he is the one that, like you said, I think he's the one that went in. Maybe he was the most naive about what war was going to be. He may have had the highest, okay, we're going to go over there and whip some ass. But he's the one, I think, really, at the end of the day, he's the most scared. And I think he's the most scared maybe because of him knowing who he is and knowing he's at the mercy of other people around him.
Yeah.
He's in that tank, he's probably the lowest on the totem pole, but he takes that rank.
You also have the least control of anybody in the tank.
Like I mentioned earlier, Michael Pena, Trini, which I don't think they ever say his first name throughout the entire movie, Gordo Garcia. And he's called Gordo throughout the entire film. And then we're going to have our new kid on the block, Logan Lerman, who plays Norman Ellison. He also
plays Percy Jackson in the really bad Percy Jackson movie.
Yeah, so he plays the Percy Jackson kid. I still, to this day, have never seen that movie.
And he's a nameless X-Wing pilot in The Force Awakens.
He's in The Force Awakens?
Yeah, the 7th Star Wars movie. The beginning of the sequel trilogy. He's an X-Wing pilot. He just is.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm sure. He's like he's a super background. He's only in the final fight scene, but it's his voice and it's his face, and it's just one of those. I think they were like, "Who wants to be in a Star Wars movie?" And he was like, "Yes, please."
Yeah, because that's not even listed on his IMDb. Because I was going to say, so he did Percy Jackson, Perks of Being a Wallflower, Fury, and then since then, this is in the past decade, he has done 8 films in the past decade, he's done mostly art house movies and appears to be very particular with the characters that he plays. He has taken kind of that what's the way I'm looking at it? He's kind of taken that acting as an art path instead of the, let's be a star and make as much money as possible, which, to each their own, whatever you want to do.
I mean, mad respect.
Also, earlier in 2014, he starred in Noah, which has Russell Crowe in it, and may be the worst movie I've ever seen in theaters.
It's rough.
It's horrible. I watched it with my grandfather, and if it wasn't for that, I would have left halfway through. Not even halfway, probably.
It's rough.
Like 10 minutes in. It's so bad.
So bad. One
movie that we will never cover on this podcast.
Nope.
Because it's not like a make fun of so bad movie. It is a, what am I watching? This sucks.
It's a, was everybody on LSD and not in a good way sort of movie?
Right. It was a bad trip that turned into a way too long movie. Mm-hmm. So now that we have our cast, let's talk about the positions that they're going to play in the tank. Now, is this kind of how it would be set up in a real World War II tank?
It's actually exactly how it would be set up in a Sherman tank, which is really cool. So they are that crowded. They are that close together. The camera does a good job of emphasizing each face, but if you pay attention, there's always a foot on a shoulder or a knee right behind a head.
Mm-hmm.
Always. So from bottom up, in terms of like the structure of the tank, you have the driver, who is Gordo, and you have the bow gunner and assistant driver, who is Logan Lerman's character, Norman. They both have access to coax machine guns, but normally their job, Gordo drives, Norman shoots.
Right.
Is the general idea. And helps spot for Gordo. Then, moving up the next level, you have Grady, who's the mechanic and the loader. Mm-hmm. And then you have Bible, who's the gunner. Their jobs are pretty explanatory in the title.
Yep.
And then at the very top, you have War Daddy, who they call him top because he literally sits at the top of the tank. He is the tank commander, so he tells them where to go. He tells them how to react. He mans the machine gun on the top of the tank. When things get hairy, he's just in charge. That's his job, to keep everybody alive.
Okay. So, fun fact here, shots of inside the tank were actually captured on a set, and there was this set that was built. It looks like the outside of a tank without the tracks, and it actually pivots around the same way the gun would, and they could remove panels so they could shoot, from different angles and get everybody in as they wanted to. It is only approximately 10% larger than the actual inside of the tank. And in real life, apparently, the driver would typically do more of the maintenance than Grady's character, the loader, would. But they did all cross-training. Because, as you see, if somebody dies, you have to be able to put someone else into that position.
It's also that thing that, yes, standard, that's it. But if the dude's good at mechanics, the dude's good at you're not going to be like, sorry, only the driver can touch that tread.
Exactly. Which I think is kind of done on purpose here. It shows personality to it, and it shows that I want to call him Toon Ass. Grady is good at what he does, and so they let him have that position. I mean, why wouldn't you? Like you said.
Yeah.
They also had, in real life, they had periscope replacement lenses because the periscope is like legit. There's no camera to it. It is legitimately a series of mirrors leading up to where you could see out, and the top mirror would get shot and would shatter. So you would pull that out and put a new periscope up in there, and then you could see again.
Yep.
So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Everything in a Sherman tank is replaceable, which is really, really cool. It's what makes them so useful in combat.
Including the people inside them, apparently. Because that's how Norman joins his crew here, and he says there must be a mistake. But
Army don't make mistakes, boy. It's not good luck.
Army don't make mistakes. So during the scene when we meet Norman and he's brought on to the crew here, there's no silence. There's artillery constantly. Is this Ally artillery or is this Germans trying to find their base?
At this point, it'll mostly be Allied artillery. Germany's pretty done at this point in the war. Now, as a grand campaign, like individual battles, they can still bring the heat, and they do. But as a fighting force, they're getting eviscerated by the Russians at this point in the war, maybe 300 miles to the east. And then what's left of them, old men, boys, and cripples, and prisoners of war, are trying to hold off the Western Allies. And it's it's a pincer move, and it's going really well for the Allies and really poorly for the Germans.
There's a powerful moment where Don's going to break down as soon as he's out of sight of his crew. This moment stuck with me, and I think this is the moment in the movie where I was like, I'm in 100%.
Because he's a hard ass right up until that moment, and then he's a hard ass as soon as the moment's over. But for about 5 seconds, he completely loses his composure.
Yeah. As Norman walks up to him and says, "I'm your new assistant driver," he looks at him. He takes like a second and a half, looks at him, he goes, No, you're not.
No, you are not.
And then there's another line. We got lots of contenders for most excellent line in this, 100%. There's another line where it says, "Wait until you see," and he says, "See what? What a man can do to another man." Okay.
Or when he asks him, "Are you saved?" and he goes, "I've been baptized," and he goes, "That's not what I meant."
That ain't what he asked. That ain't what I see. You got to listen.
You got to listen.
I freaking love Grady, man.
Oh, yeah.
He's always got like a half
Scratches
pound of
his own
mouth
head with the screwdriver.
With the screwdriver, yeah. So an SS officer is walked through the camp, and Don proceeds to kick his ass before Boyd pulls him away, reminding him there are MPs everywhere, meaning military police, right? So this is kind of like a, hey, we can kill him out there, but you can't do anything to him here.
Yeah. It also shows how hated the SS are, because Norman is like, what just happened? And War Daddy tells him, that's an SS. Those guys started this war. We're going to finish it. Like,
yeah. So we just covered Great Escape, and I thought there was actually a couple scenes here that I thought really showed the comparison. You know, we talked about how the Nazis seemed tame in that movie, and why would you not just shoot all the POWs? You're the Nazis. You're the bad guys. There's no redeeming you anyways. So it just kind of shows that the Americans have all of these POWs, all these German soldiers, and even SS that they can't touch because of the Geneva Convention, because of these rules of war, because we're the good guys and they're the bad guys, or, you know, whatever. But I just thought that was kind of a neat little moment that brings levity, or not levity, no, it's the opposite, brings weight to what happens in The Great Escape.
Oh, yeah. It's also worth noting that the movie does a really good job of, the men don't hate the German soldiers they encounter. They simply have to kill them to survive. They hate the SS soldiers.
There's a difference. Yes. So they move out to flank the Germans and come across fleeing German civilians. Now, 2 questions here, 2-parter. What's life like for German civilians at this time? And total war has been announced. Why is there still German civilians openly leaving? How are they not being captured? And I mean, total war is supposed to be total, right?
So the ones that are leaving are going to be fleeing the front line and or a completely bombed and shattered city. And Germany does not have enough able-bodied soldiers left to conscript the entire population the way they want to. Like they don't have the guns, they don't have the men, they don't have the ability. So they do it as much as they can, but there's millions of Germans who flee. Especially as at this point in the war, Hitler kills himself in May. It's March. It's Berlin and a couple other cities. That's it. That's all that's left of Germany as a fighting whole.
So real quick, so all of these fleeing German citizens are really rebelling against their own government through their action.
They're in a way, they're admitting the futility of further defense, which through the gaze of the Americans is just common sense. Through the gaze of the Germans is treason, or not the Germans. Through the gaze of the Nazis is treason.
Now, how are they met by the American soldiers?
Well, it's easy. So the front line is not everybody's not always on the front line, and the front line is moving. So either they're fleeing from the front line and they're coming away from the furthest reaches of the battle, and the tanks are moving to reinforce the furthest reaches of the battle, or they're fleeing a bombed out city that the actual army hasn't gotten to yet, but that has been so effectively wiped out that there's no resistance left.
So the American soldiers, there's a line here where it says there may be a wolf among the sheep. If they get in the way, that's their problem. So they're not, at least in the movie, they're not openly targeting or there's no animosity towards the German civilians, not the same way there are German soldiers, and especially, like you said, towards the SS.
Yeah, there's no like widespread animosity, but there is also very much the feeling of, well, you reap what you sow. Like,
Yeah,
I'm not
you
going to
could've
gun you
stopped
down in
this.
cold blood, but if one of you pulls a launcher, I'm going to kill as many of you as I need to make sure my tank doesn't get blown up.
Right.
So
Okay.
And then the life of German civilians is absolutely awful at this point. There's no food, really. The utilities are being constantly destroyed by bombs. The Waffen-SS, where they have people, are executing anybody who speaks out. The
Mhm.
government is crumbling. The Russians are attacking the Eastern Front with a savagery that can only be challenged by the German attacks into Russia 3 years earlier. So on the one side, you have the cold, mechanized aircraft tank warfare of the Western Allies. And on the East, you have 7 million Russians who want payback for the 21 million Russians you murdered with your Waffen-SS and your Wehrmacht 3 years earlier, blazing through the countryside, hell's bells towards Berlin, while your own government is ruled by a crazy man and you're falling to pieces.
So was it better to encounter, for the German civilians, was it better to encounter an American troop than it was Russian?
Let me put it this way. British civilians are only killed in bombing raids by the Germans. American civilians aren't killed by the Germans. Russian civilians are routinely executed, mistreated by the German occupying force in 1941. 21 million Russians die.
Yeah.
1 out of like 7 Russians dies in World War II. Most of them directly or only one level indirectly killed by the German invasion. So in the Russian mind, civilians don't exist anymore. You're German, I kill you.
Okay.
Which can be justified because that was how they were treated. Like they're
Right.
attacking Germany the same way they were attacked. And it's not quite as brutal. Like, it's not a for sure thing that the Russians are just going to gun you down, but you have a way better chance of being treated like a human being with the Western Allies.
So it's better to, if you're going to flee to the West than it is the East.
And if you are anything that even resembles a German soldier, going to the Russians is almost certain death. Go to the West.
All right. So Norman's going to learn how quickly situations change when a single young soldier using an RPG sends one of the tanks up in flames. This is legitimately a kid in a uniform, and he's going to use what is he using here that he blows up this tank? And then, do the Americans have STGs?
No, so he captured that STG from a dead German soldier.
I thought they were I thought that was a German gun. That's why I was confused.
Which you'll notice he only ever has like the 1 or 2 clips of ammo for it. That's
Right.
why. But the STG is the first true assault rifle. And if you can get your hands on one, people really like them because it shoots a 7mm bullet. It's like an AK-47 before an AK-47. So they're nice to have.
Interesting. I didn't know that. So the STG was the first like fully automatic assault rifle.
It's a full automatic, not machine gun, assault rifle caliber gun.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Was that standard issue for the German army?
It's standard issue in the sense that they have them and they give them out. But the thing about Germany and its weapons of war programs is that Germany has hellacious weapons. The STG-44, terrifying. MG-42, terrifying. Tanks, Luftwaffe, terrifying. They are stupidly complicated to make because they're all cutting edge technology. And so you don't have, by the time you develop them, the war's too far gone for you to build the industry to keep making them.
There is a interesting fact that we'll get to later involving a certain not lion tank.
So they've got them, but they don't, they don't have a lot of them. And then as far as what the kid is using, it's a Panzerfaust, and it's a recoilless launcher tube that you put a preloaded anti-tank warhead into. You point, you shoot, and you hope you hit it.
It's like a bottle rocket.
Yeah, and the reason they're so close is much like a bottle rocket or a Roman candle, you have like 90 to 200 feet max. That you can aim that thing with any real accuracy. And
you hope it actually exits the tube and doesn't just blow up right there.
Yeah, and it's pretty reliable. I mean, it's pretty. It's like an RPG. It's pretty idiot proof. Put missile in, point away from you, pull trigger because it's just an air.
I got confused at step 2.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure you did. And here's the crazy thing: is it only cost 15 to 25 Reichsmarks, so Nazi dollars, to make, which is maybe $100 now, $150. But for a war weapon, that's super cheap. They built 8.2 million of them.
My goodness.
Yeah. So the Hitler Youth are using Panzerfaust. They hit the lead tank, and they hit something flammable in the lead tank, either the gasoline or a high flammable round, and the whole thing lights on fire.
Yeah. So during this, they're communicating through a radio. Is the radio actually built into their helmet?
Yes, but not built in. What it would be is you would have a speaker set, and you'd have like a big ear cuff that was just attached to your helmet.
Okay.
Or under it. And so they're speaking through their throat chokers, and then they're hearing through these big, it would probably go under your helmet, but they have headsets that they wear.
They look small. They look discreet in this, and I was like, I don't know if that would be like that. Just seems. I mean,
they got pretty good at it by 1944, 1945. So.
Bluetooth wasn't around for a long time, so I'm just saying it just seems kind of hard to believe. Clint Eastwood's son's going to make an appearance. This is Scott Eastwood. He's one of the soldiers at the base that they arrived to. So does Jason Isaac, returning from playing the diabolical villain in The Patriot. What was his name?
Oh, in The Patriot or in this?
In The Patriot.
Tavington.
Tavington. Jason Isaac played Tavington very well in The Patriot. He's in here. He's not in it for very long, but he's got a couple scenes here.
He does a really good job.
He does great, yeah. Scott Eastwood, again, Clint Eastwood's son, and Shia LaBeouf got into a fight on set that apparently had to be broken up by Brad Pitt.
Wow.
It was because Scott Eastwood was spitting his tobacco onto the tank. Bro. And Shia LaBeouf found it disrespectful, and they got into a brawl. And then he found out that the director had told him to spit his tobacco onto the tank. Speaking of which, on the outside of these tanks, which I'm sure you would, maybe I'm skipping ahead here, sorry. They have these logs and sandbags. And I was like, why do they have these? And apparently it is to protect against sticky mines and to basically add to the fortification of the outside.
Yep.
Interesting. I was like, are they building something?
Yeah. The logs aren't going to stop a direct shot, but they might slow it down. And they will stop a glancing shot. Like if you're going to scrape the side of the tank and you hit the log instead, now your logs will be gone. So they're a one-hit wonder. But
so Jason Isaac's character here tells us that they need to head towards a pinned down group of troops. This is kind of going to lead to, I guess there's another setup later on, but we're on our way to really the road that's going to take us through the rest of this movie here. Fury leads the way as an American-sized can of whoop-ass gets opened up on some Krauts.
Yes.
Also, I don't know if Krauts is considered a racial term or a slur towards German people now, but we're talking about Nazis, and so I'm going to call them Krauts from time to time throughout this because that's what I wrote down.
It is indeed a slur for Germans.
Okay, well, at this time, they were Nazis. So I'm not talking about modern-day Germans. I'm talking about Nazis. So don't get offended.
Before you continue, you're starting to sound a little like that old man who's like, I'm not talking about those black people. I'm talking about those black people over there.
I don't think that applies here. Because
I'm just saying it's a slippery
the black
slope.
People were never, putting people in concentration camps and killing them.
I'm simply saying it's a slippery slope of thought, but you do you.
I'm doing me. All right. The shot of the tanks driving over a completely flattened corpse. This is something that has stuck with me. And I read a fact that this is based on something in real life. Do you have any elaboration here? Is this flattened corpse something that was real?
I mean, first and foremost, it's based on the fact that tanks run over people. They just do. Because you have limited vision. It's a tank. If you're wounded and you're in front of the tank, they're going to run you over. If you piss them off and you're in front of the tank, they're going to run you over. That being said, World War II, because it's the first super tank war and honestly the only war with as many tanks as it has in it, is just famous for tank-based warfare and brutality. In fact, there is a massacre in France during the invasion of France in 1940 called the Chasselet Massacre, which 2 German tanks rounded up a bunch of French soldiers and some civilians and machine gunned them down, and then to make sure they were dead, ran over their bodies with the treads. So that's probably the most direct reference I can give you.
My goodness.
But you're in a steel horse with a gun on it. You're running people over with that thing. Everybody's doing it, Yeah,
it happens in All Quiet.
Yeah. I'm not stopping for you. Get out of my way or get run
Right.
over, man.
It happens in here too. He runs over them when they're buried in the ground in like a little trench.
Mhm.
Don leads the way and manages the 4 tanks, calling commands as they slowly push through the enemy line where they face down machine guns and anti-tank fire. This is the 88. This is the 88 where they've got the long...
The flak 88. Yep.
Yeah. The calmness of Don to think and call out orders while all of this is going on, man, unreal. Let's take a moment here to talk about that. Don is exceptional at his job. Like we said, he's 50. So this is 50 in 1945. So that would put him being born in 1895.
Yep.
And he speaks German. There is a theory that he served in World War I. And that is why, because he's quite a bit older than everyone else in the tank. He already speaks German. Now, apparently whenever he goes by and he says, you see that? That's an entire city on fire. Apparently, he talks about how his mother was German in a deleted or, shortened scene. He talks about how his mother was German, and that explains why he speaks German, but it also leads to believe that maybe he used that still and felt like he was obligated to join the war effort during the First World War.
I will say 50 is pretty old for a sergeant to be in active combat even in World War II. So I'm going to guess that like every other Brad Pitt role he's in after he turns 40, he's supposed to be about 10 years younger than he actually is because he looks 10 years younger than he actually is. So I'm going to guess in the director's mind, War Daddy's 40, but he was in the Army before war broke out. And so he's a trained tank sergeant.
He doesn't look a day over like 32.
I know he doesn't.
I still can't believe that he was 50 when this came out.
Yeah. But they also mentioned later in the movie that when they were trapped in Kasserine Pass in Africa, he soiled himself. So if he was a war veteran, probably wouldn't do that, be my guess.
I don't know, but he's inside a tank.
But
maybe things for the first time.
I don't know. I'm just saying that the implication is that he was no more of a badass than any of the rest of them until he chose to be.
And they also mention that he likes horses, and horses were more prominent in World War I.
This is true. He could also just be a guy from Montana because horses in general were more prominent in the 30s.
That's true. That's true.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that like there's a lot of explanations for why War Daddy is the way he is. Like,
yep. Speaking of which, the way he is, the troops find a crowd wearing a U.S. uniform, and Don decides this time Norman pops his Nazi-killing cherry. The boys sit around, and subtle as it is, there's a change in both Norman and Don after this scene. Yep. Both of them. He's gonna, and I'm not a huge fan of this scene. But I feel like it's one of the weaker ones, but the subtlety and the changes afterwards. This is where he has a German soldier kneel down, facing away. He's begging for his life in German, and Don forces Norman, after he's saying, I can't kill him, kill me, don't make me do this, forces him to shoot this soldier in the back. It's supposed to help him get over it. It's supposed to purposefully kill his innocence, and you can see that it hurts Don to do so, but from this moment forward, they have more of a father-son relationship than they did before this scene.
I also think Don realizes immediately after he forces Norman to do it, like how far he has slipped, and that Norman would have become comfortable killing people anyway, and that was an unnecessary way to do it, but that his cruelty and his need to survive has overtaken even like his common sense just a little bit, because he dials back his savagery for the rest of the movie until he has to unleash it at the very end.
Yes and no. I agree, but I also disagree. I think, yes, he realizes how savage he's become, but I don't think he regrets it in any way. I think he realizes that if Norman can't do his job, he puts everyone else in the tank at risk. He's not only putting his own life at risk, he's not only putting Don's life at risk, he's putting the others in the tank that he has promised he will keep alive until the end of the war. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like he is saddened that he had to do it, but I don't think he's like caught off guard by it. It's just like he says earlier, like that it's just like a sad truth. He started killing Germans in Africa, then in, where was it? Belgium? France? I don't know, somewhere. Now he's killing Germans in Germany. It will end, but before then, a lot of people got to die. And I feel like that's just a sad truth that he's come to accept, and he has to make Norman accept it as well.
Yeah, I can see that.
And also, you got to think, if Norman was a few months younger, hadn't joined for just a few months, wouldn't have had to gone through any of this.
He's also a clerk typist, so he went through basic training, and then he was taught how to accurately type really quickly. And so he's like, this is not what I do. This is not what I'm trained to do. You need me to write a memo of the battle. I can do that. I am not trained to machine gun dead bodies.
Right. Moving on to another German town here. Did the SS really hang civilians and put signs around their neck for those who wouldn't fight for Germany?
100%. And the more desperate it got, the more people they would do that to.
Sons of... okay.
Yeah, they suck.
Getting some sniper scenes from Saving Private Ryan vibes. There's a lot of comparisons. People compare this and Saving Private Ryan like it's the same movie. I don't see it other than this scene. This scene whenever they arrive to town, and I think it's just the set and the way that it looks, gives me that same vibe. But like they ask the old man, hey, where are the German soldiers? He points, he gets shot. Now we have open fire. Yeah, it reminds me of that sniper scene.
I mean, to be fair, though, like being ambushed in a German town is being ambushed in a German town.
Right.
Like,
Scott Eastwood must have pissed somebody off, or I guess just wasn't very prominent, because he just gets shot in like a half-second little bit of blood and falls to the ground, and we never see him again. Nobody cares. Moving on. The POV shot from the cellar as the tank gun turns towards it is hilarious and horrifying at the same time. Like they're in this little bunker. It's like a half basement where you just have the small window at head height. And from that window, you see whatever 76 millimeter cannon turn towards it.
It's like, look at you.
And the fact that, it's a tank, so it doesn't move quickly. It just moves slowly. And
it also shows how suicidal the defense of Germany is becoming, because you knew you were going to die. There's 4 tanks in that column. They can all see you. But you choose to mow down, 3 or 4 or 5 Americans just to do so.
So we're going to see this, and I think we see this twice, actually. Throw some peat at the ground floor. That's a line that he says. Peat being a type of ammo that's in the cannon.
Yeah, it's Willy Peat, so it's white phosphorus.
White phosphorus.
Basically, it's a chemical, that burns through human flesh. And the only way you can get it off is to cut it off.
Like alien blood.
Like napalm before napalm. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So when he says put some Willy Peat in there, he's basically saying burn them alive, which is why Norman then guns down the people who come out, because those little white dots on them, if you don't cut them out, they're going to burn through their skin and bones.
But notice Norman doesn't seem bothered by this.
Nope.
He guns them down, again, out of mercy. Dordo even says you should have let him burn. But he's still technically just killed other men, and he doesn't seem bothered.
Yeah, he's pretty okay with it.
We're moving along in his quick becoming of a American soldier deep in the heart of Germany at this point. What was it really like when Americans took over a town in Germany? And these elites that shoot themselves when they heard that the Allies were coming. Is this something that happened? Was there a reason why they would kill themselves?
So when Americans or the Allies would take over a German town, it's pretty similar to how it happens in the movie. The first couple hours, first night, maybe even a couple days would be kind of crazy, because you've got these men, they're drunk, they're happy they survived, they're royally pissed off that they even have to be there. Widespread abuses don't necessarily happen, but it's not unheard of to have, rapes, pillagings, beatings, things like that. That being said, after the frontline troops move through, American occupation is relatively fine. They're not out to stick it to the populace of Germany. They're just out to bring down the Nazi party.
Not like the Russians.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
And then the high-ranking Nazi officials usually off themselves for one of 3 reasons. They're afraid of what the Americans will do to them, because at this point, Germans are being told that the Americans are mixed-race savages who are coming to destroy everything they hold and love.
Damn right we are.
They've teamed up with the Russians. They allow all these immigrant races into their bloodlines. They're heathens. They're scared of what the Waffen-SS will do to them if they don't get captured by the Americans and don't die defending the city.
Fair
or
enough.
3, which was also a thing, they're just that loyal. They're just that fanatically loyal to the cause that they would rather die than see it be undone. And we don't know which one is which because you can't ask them because they're dead.
Well, we'll have to answer in the next
We
live.
even have records of people blowing up their own families at dinner with grenades.
Wow.
Yeah.
There is another excellent line here where Norman asks, "Why are you showing me this?" As they walk around the table and they say, Don says they got sloppy drunk and then they shot themselves. Don says, "Ideals are peaceful, history is violent." Beautiful line. Almost feel like this was from something else, but maybe not. I don't know. If this is an original line from this movie, bravo. Bravo. The scene with the 2 German girls. As I stated earlier, right in the middle of this movie, showing the humanity and the harsh exterior of war. Kyle, let's break down this scene real quick. First off, and I was just thinking about this whenever I watched it. When I first watched it, I'd never experienced nicotine, and so it didn't affect me in any way. But Don hands the German girls 2 packs of cigarettes, and as someone who used to smoke, I couldn't imagine how valuable cigarettes must have been, because you can't go to the store and just go buy more.
No.
And to be in the middle of hell and to have to also go through nicotine withdrawals? No. No, thank you. No, thank you.
Or even if you didn't smoke before the war, to go through hell and somebody hands you something that you know briefly will make you feel at least marginally better. I mean, God. Like,
yeah, must have been handing out gold.
Even if they didn't smoke like before 1945. Like, just I don't smoke. I have lung disease. If I'm in an occupied German city and a soldier walks up and offers me a cigarette, I'm probably taking it. You know, like, come on. And it's 1940. Everybody smokes. Like, many people smoke in the 40s.
This is a 15-minute scene where we go on a roller coaster of tone and subtlety, where it looks like, let's just call a spade a spade.
Yeah.
It looks like, because of the brutality we saw earlier, that Don may go in and force himself on these women.
Looks like it.
And he may be taking Norman to do it with him. Are we having a repeat? We already have murder. Well, it's war. I don't know if it counts as murder, but essentially...
You got an execution that amounts to war crime.
An execution.
So,
Okay, so we had an execution. Now we have these 2 women who are unable to defend themselves in a war-torn city. If those women had been downstairs, if those women had been out in the street, I mean, I want to say that the American soldiers did everything right and by the book, but let's be honest. Okay? At least there's a possibility. Okay?
Oh, there's a high risk. Yeah.
So in that scene, that's the way it looks like it's going. And then Norman, uncomfortable, scared, just the same as the 2 girls are essentially, goes over, starts playing the piano. And there's just peace. The lady starts singing along. There's this connection, even though there's a separation, a language barrier. And he says, "If you don't take her into that bedroom, I will." And Norman doesn't do anything, but the girl, still not knowing what he just said, but just like I said, the subtlety, the implications here, the tone, she grabs him, takes him into the bedroom.
And then the girl's older sister, I believe, or cousin.
I think is it her aunt?
Maybe it's her aunt. The older woman goes to stop them, and Brad Pitt, who speaks German, stops her and not unkindly says, let it go. They're young
and they're alive. Yeah. Man.
And she kind of, nods and then
she's
goes
not
back
happy
to
about
what she's doing. But she gets it. She doesn't argue. She's like, okay, yeah, fair enough.
And then afterwards, when they come back out, the girls kind of share like a little grin, like a little chuckle, which like he said, the boys, when they come up and they're upset, now the tone changes again when the boys come up.
They have their ass on, man, like all the way.
Can you blame them? They've got a great point here.
You could have gone with them, and instead you went and bought prostitutes and got drunk. So,
but
I'm going to blame them.
They didn't get an invite. And like I said, like they said, is, you guys are up here playing house. I'm sorry, I thought we were in the middle of war. I thought we were brothers. I didn't realize that this new guy got invited to things that I didn't. I can understand why the boys are upset.
I mean, I can, but I think their behavior, it's like your behavior right now is the whole reason that like you're all lost. Like, I think that's also the point though. And it's good. Like it's a really powerful moment where you realize that War Daddy might be the only redeemable one left in that tank in terms of like they've all lost it. And they're not bad men necessarily, but they're gone. The war has taken everything that they've had.
Yeah.
And so the fact that their gut reaction when they get into this building is not only to abuse Norman and War Daddy, that's justified. To abuse the women that live in the apartment, that's unjustified. And that's War Daddy takes the abuse of him and Norman. He takes it. They start antagonizing the women and telling this awful story about a German army that was captured and, put down in France. True. And the horses they had to put down in the summer. And he throws his knife on the table and stares them all in the eye. It's the enough is enough, you assholes.
Yep. Yep, exactly. This is a great scene right in the middle of it. Now, plane house gets cut short. A recon plane spots enemy troops heading towards the supply train. Every other tank is heading to Berlin. We're that close to the end of the war, but they must hold this crossroads to prevent a slaughter because essentially you have soldiers that are not really soldiers. You have a whole bunch of Normans. You have healthcare workers and typists and clerks and things like that. You have
and
a supply
doctors
chain.
and engineers. Yeah.
Exactly. You have people who are not, they're soldiers, but they're not trained killers, been on the front line this whole time.
Yeah.
There is the scene here, and now knowing it's coming, I feel like takes away from it. The first time I watched this, when that mortar hits the building,
oh, I know,
and kills the girl,
oh, I know,
and we talked about this earlier, that you mentioned that maybe Grady was the one that was the most naive. Maybe he was the one who was the most innocent going in and has been harmed the most.
I think this scene backs him up because Norman goes to dig Emma, the girl's name is Emma, her body out of the rubble. She's very clearly dead. Like she's covered in bricks and has fallen 30 feet. And he tries to hold her, and Grady yanks him away and slaps him and says, "Who do you think you are? You think you're Jesus Christ? Gonna bring her back from the dead? Get your ass in the tank." And Norman tries to fight him, and he's like, "Yeah, you're mad? You feel that? That's war. Now let's go." So again, it's the support that Grady is like that because he's been there. He's like, "I know what you're going through. You can't bring her back. Get your crap together. Get mad. Get angry. Get in the tank."
This wakes up the soldier that's been buried deep in Norman's subconscious here. And at that moment, the machine is born.
Yes, he is.
That's the moment that he is no longer the kid at the beginning. He is the man that's pissed off and ready to kill someone. Then we get, probably the two best scenes in this movie are back to back. Are back to back, right in the dead center. What other movie has ever done that? What other movie are the two best scenes in the second act and one right after the other?
All I can think of is maybe the Magnificent Seven remake, because the Gatling gun takes out the last stand in the bell tower right before Chris Pratt's character throws the dynamite on it while faking his own death. That's maybe, but it's not nearly the same caliber of movie or the same caliber of scene.
No. Yeah. No, I get that. No, those are great scenes, but no, yeah.
But not in a gritty war movie. Usually that's action movie stuff, you know?
So the scene that we're talking about here is the tiger scene. And I know this is the one that Kyle is excited to talk about. The tiger scene begins with tranquility being abruptly ended by one of the 4 tanks being blown up by an 88. It is an 88 in the tank?
So at this point, the audience has been trained to fear the whistle because German high-velocity guns go as they come through. You hear it for about 0.75 seconds before the final tank of the column gets blown sky high. And I remember the first time watching it, you hear it, and you have just enough time to think, "Oh my God," and then the tank blows up.
Which is more than likely what would have happened to one of those soldiers.
Oh yeah, you've got enough time to process, that's a high-velocity gun, and then boom.
And then, what are you going to do? It's high velocity. What are you going to do?
And it is an 88. So the tank column is ambushed by an unknown German tank. That when they see it, it's a Tiger 1. And the Tiger 1 is the second heaviest, second most advanced tank the German army can throw at them. There's technically a Tiger II. There's only a handful of them made, and they really try to defend Berlin. The Tiger I looks like a freaking M1 Abrams if it was all flat instead of curved. Look it up. It's terrifying. It's hiding in the bush. It has this giant artillery version of the Flak 88 on it, and it can one-shot every Sherman tank in that column. So they back up, they pop smoke in it, they talk about it, the three surviving tanks, Fury and the other two. Some of the other sergeants are like, we should go around it, we should get by it. And War Daddy says, if that tank gets by us, it's going to kill the entire company because it's a Tiger. He goes, we're it. This is our option. And
we're
then they go,
only tanks that can stop it.
And then the other two go, well, all right, then let's go. And they go head on at this Tiger tank as fast as their tanks can go. And I think this is a very good place to discuss the difference right now between a Sherman tank and a Tiger tank.
Before we go any farther, I'd like to announce to everyone that can't see us that Kyle's wearing a Golden Girls shirt while describing World War II tank warfare.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
All right. Well, you can continue. I just wanted the audience to know what I'm seeing.
Oh, yeah, and I'm grinning like an idiot as I'm about to describe the deaths of so many tankers.
It's my great friend wearing a Golden Girls outfit.
Like, man, I don't know about you. I'm a Dorothy. You strike me as a Blanche. Anyway.
I have no idea who those are.
Well, you're a Blanche. All you out there, y'all know. Anyway, so the difference between Sherman tanks and Tiger tanks. Sherman tanks are American-made. They're introduced in 1942, I believe. Yeah, 1942. At the time, they are the best tank in World War II.
Unstoppable.
Yeah, they are, briefly. They have good armor. They have a powerful cannon. They have an electrically traverse turret, which is unheard of at this point. They have a gyroscope in them that, in theory, you can fire while the tank is moving. Mm-hmm. You really can't. But it keeps your sight relatively on target. So by the time you're done going 30 miles an hour over a hilly field, you only have to adjust an increment instead of all the way back on the target. They're fast. They're reliable. They're produced en masse. For about a year and a half, they bring the heat to the Panzer IIIs of the German army, and it's tit for tat. Germany goes, well, we can't have that. There's way too many German tanks. If they're as good as our tanks, we're going to die. They roll out a bunch of different options, the Panzer IV, the Panzer V. They also roll out the Tiger I, which is actually also built in 1942, but it's not super duper produced until 1943 and 1944. The Tiger rolls onto the scene far heavier than a Sherman tank, far more armored than a Sherman tank, a far bigger gun in it, bigger machine guns, a bigger engine. The only way Sherman tanks can reliably take out a Tiger is by hitting them in the ass. And even then, it's not necessarily a full thing.
Not metaphorically, literally.
No, literally in the weakest armor. So the back of the turret, the back of the chassis, maybe the backside profile. If you hit that Tiger tank dead on, unless you were at point blank range, it's going to bounce off.
Which is something that I saw in the little documentary I was watching on this, is the fact that that is something that actual World War II veterans said they saw firsthand, was hitting a Tiger tank directly.
At point blank range.
And it bouncing off. Off. You just shot it with a tank.
And here's the thing about the Tiger I. The Tiger I has flat armor. The Tiger II, the King Tiger, has sloped armor. So, which is what we use today. Anyway, that's irrelevant. Part of what makes this Sherman tank column particularly disadvantaged is, with the exception of Fury, they are standard issue early model Sherman tanks. They have the base 75 millimeter, 76 millimeter cannon.
75 centimeter B.
Should be a cannon, bro. That's a battleship cannon. 75 millimeter cannon on them. They're good in a fight against any other tank. They can't touch this Tiger until they get close and behind it. Fury has a second generation Sherman turret, which implies that at some point this tank crew transferred tanks. It happened. It's not a whole much bigger round. It's far faster. And so in theory, if Fury gets close, they can punch a hole in this Tiger tank from point blank range in any direction. But the strategy is still going to be, and that's one inaccuracy that war veterans have marked in the movie, is that type of Sherman tank, once you got close, the strategy was just pound shells into that Tiger.
Okay.
Because you have the faster gun. That being said, this would still be standard strategy. The three of them line up in the road. They're faster than the tiger. They're more agile. They're heavily outgunned and out-armored. Your only hope is to be faster. They go full speed across this open field. The tiger immediately starts heading at them full tilt because the tiger knows that the closer it gets within reason, the more accurate it is. It needs one shot on each of these tanks.
Yep.
You need 3 splashes. You're home free. They head out. They're throwing as many shells at this tiger, knowing it won't penetrate, hoping that they can just distract the crew. Because every time that tank gets hit, it rattles, it shakes. Your crew's disoriented. This tiger crew's crack, man. I don't know where they served, but these guys do not care.
Right.
They immediately line up on one of the tanks. First shot, and this is where the gyroscope comes in handy. It's crazy how accurate this movie is. The tiger is moving, and its accuracy is garbage. Its first shot hits the guy perched in the top of the tank, blows it to smithereens. That tank tries to readjust. Tiger nails it dead on, blows it to hell. The next 2 tanks are now close enough. War Daddy says, split him. It's our only shot. They go around the tiger. The tiger has to follow one.
Right.
It makes the wrong choice, and it goes after the older Sherman tank.
Yeah.
It blows it to hell. That turret comes swinging back around at Fury. Gordo has it floored. He has it cranked so high that you can hear it in the movie. That tank is revving about to explode. They get into a drag race with the turret on this tiger tank. The Gordo wins by stopping in the middle of his run and letting the tank shell go in front of Fury and then gunning it again. You get all the way to the back of this tank where there's an amazing aerial shot of how much bigger and scarier this tiger is than this little Sherman. Meanwhile, Fury has bounced 4 shots off of this tiger, just to point that out. And the tiger has almost killed Fury 3 different times in this exchange, even before they got that close. They're racing it. The Bible, the gunner, gets it, fires, misses, because they're going at like 30 miles an hour.
Right.
They all yell at him, and he's like, we're going too fast. It's not that freaking easy. So War Daddy calls the shot. Bible lines it up. War Daddy says fire. They punch a Coke can-sized hole in the back of this tiger tank, and you see flame. It's still running. The turret is still moving. They hit it again. Fire, smoke. The giant beast roars its death rattle and dies. And Fury mops up the survivors with Norman callously and coldly mowing down the officer that stands in the German tank firing at War Daddy.
Kyle,
4 on 1, and the tank that survives did so by the skin of its teeth.
No kidding. I have a couple little facts here. Let's just do it since that goes with that, what you just said. So another thing that I saw during this, they made 1,300 tigers. Germany apparently made 1,300 tigers. You had 50,000 Shermans.
Yep.
The ideal, this is what, according to veterans, ideally it was 5v1. And this was exactly the tactic, was split up, get behind it, punch a hole in it.
And the hope is that 2 of you made it behind the tiger if you had 5.
Kyle, this is an amazing fact that I think you deserve to tell. Can you mention a little interesting thing about the Tiger 131 that they used in this?
Yeah, there's a small interesting thing. I want to preface it with part of the reason there's only 1,300 Tigers is they are a pain in the ass to make and to maintain. That's their downfall during the war. They're so difficult to maintain that time erodes them faster than normal tanks. When this movie was made, there was one functional Tiger, and it was captured by the Allies. And it was used in this movie.
It's in the freaking movie.
The Tiger tank that you see is, and it may not even run now. That was 10 years ago.
That's 10 years ago.
Was at the time the only running Tiger tank in human existence.
I can't believe they let him shoot 3 holes into it.
I hate you. I'm just ignoring that.
But they really used the Tiger tank.
I do remember the factoid that they were so worried about tearing it up that they poured cement down and then put a fake field on top of it.
So they hauled it out to the set with a semi.
Yeah.
And only certain shots are of the actual tank. The one where it's hiding in the bushes and then it takes off, and then a couple of it just kind of moving full steam ahead.
Oh, yeah. By the way, a Tiger tank weighs 60 tons.
60 tons.
120,000 pounds.
Gosh.
And the armor on that bad boy is anywhere from 25 to 120 millimeters thick.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's, steel like that.
To imagine the cannon on a tank being shot point blank and it just bouncing off That's
I
like
know.
some Superman, Iron Man crap, man. That's Marvel movie level of invincibility.
Yeah,
That's terrifying.
Well, that's the story, with the exception of the Air Force and the Navy. That is the story of feet on the ground in World War II in a nutshell. Is the Germans have better technology? Thank God we have more of ours. It's like
Wild. All right, man. And let's talk about this movie for just a second here. We're at our finale. We have middle of the movie, 2 amazing scenes, and then they're going to get to the crossroads where they blow the track and they decide to stand their ground.
Yep.
This is where people are the most critical of this movie, is the final scene, the final battle.
Yeah.
Which, sure, whatever. But it's so awesome. I don't care.
It's amazing.
It's horribly inaccurate, and I'm not even the history guy, and I understand that.
Yeah.
But who cares? It's freaking awesome, man.
It's one of those, it is and it isn't, in the sense that if an SS battalion armed with that few Panzerfausts showed up to a tank, it's very accurate. The problem is that late in the war, there is no SS battalion that only has 3 Panzerfausts.
Is there even an SS battalion that would be like completely fine and well rationed?
Oh, no, there's not. And
I was
that's the
gonna say
thing
that
too,
seems off to me.
is and they wouldn't be attacking. Like that's it's an inaccurate premise, but given the constraints of the premise, the battle's pretty accurate. Like, like if this had happened, if this was possible, the battle would be right. It's just the classic Hollywood thing where I'm taking like an SS battalion from 3 years ago and I'm putting it with a broken down tank now, sort of like.
So they're alone. They plan to go to the top of the hill. They don't make it. They get stuck at the crossroads. The crossroads, ironically, that they're told to hold in the first place to protect this supply chain, to protect these soldiers who can't protect themselves to the same extent that Fury can. So as nightfall approaches, Norman, who's on watch duty, spots an incoming SS battalion heading towards the crossroad. The boys plan to run, but Don says he's staying, and one by one they agree to stay as well.
With Norman being the first person to agree to stay.
Norman's still mad about Emma. They set up the tank to appear abandoned in an attempt to lure the Krauts in closely. They load everything from the main cannon to pistols. And when he pulls the scotch from the compartment, says might as well get a little tight, won't be around for the hangover. They know they're waiting for their death.
Yep.
I love this scene. I hate there was a long period in Hollywood where Christianity was very popular, and there's nothing wrong with that. But they love to put Bible verses into movies, and everybody kept trying to come up with a new Bible verse that didn't fit into their movie. But they were like, it's a Bible verse, so it's deep and poetic. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. This one, I think, works. This is a little after that era.
I think this is one of the most earnest portrayals of religion in warfare that we have. No kidding. Though, like, it's not at all. Bible is not showy. He's not, look at me, I'm holier than thou. He is, we need a reason to believe that we are saved after this, and mine is Christ. Like, that's,
Like, okay, the fact that there's no Oscar nominations, snubbed, ridiculous. But the fact that if there was going to be one, I think it should be Shia LaBeouf.
It should.
It should have been Shia LaBeouf in his portrayal here for the best supporting actor. Man, he does so well. He says, and I heard the voice of the Lord say, who shall I send? Who will go for us? And I said, here am I. Send me. And Don replies, Isaiah chapter 6. Now, I read the rest of the verse here, and it basically is talking about how he's unworthy. And then an angel cleanses the man's lips. I don't know who's talking. I guess Isaiah? I don't know. Anyways, but he cleanses the man's lips, and then the Lord asks, who shall I send? He says, send me. So, even when you dive into the verse even more, it really is showing these men who were ordinary became extraordinary and have a duty to fulfill.
And will now purify themselves the best way they can with their last act.
Exactly. Okay. When the fighting starts early on, they say, we got a case rupture. Do you know what this is?
That is so a case rupture is when your bullet or your tank shell misfires and blows a hole in the side of the casing. If it's bad enough, it can ruin your gun barrel. So it's either a case rupture in the main gun. They're close enough at that point. I'm guessing it's a case rupture in the coax machine gun that goes with the main gun.
Right.
But basically one gun, like your main gun is down. Your most versatile gun that can rotate 360 is down.
Yeah. So Grady's our first to die here. Was the Panzerfaust supposed to explode upon impact? Because it goes through the side, it literally goes through his torso.
Yeah.
But nothing happens inside. And there's even a moment of them all being stunned. I mean, obviously, something just shot a, like you said, Coke can sized hole through their tank.
Yeah.
But there's like a moment of, we should all be dead. In my opinion.
Yeah.
So it should have exploded.
Yeah, it's a dud. I mean, that's what it is. And they're armor-piercing explosives. So they're supposed to cut through the armor, and then as soon as they hit something substantial in the tank, blow up. Because if you just blow up when you hit the tank armor, you're not doing crap. The idea is that it cuts through the armor, it cuts through Brady, and then it doesn't blow up when it hits. And so, yeah, that's the we should all be dead.
Over and over again, they dodge death, and then one by one, they end up dying.
The odds are truly insurmountable. You only have so many bullets. You only have so much human stamina. And the SS troops just start swarming this tank like hornets in a bear. And, one bear can kill 1 million hornets, but 5 million hornets is going to kill that bear. Right. And that's the vibe that you start to get as the soldiers just get closer. And I love the way it's directed because it starts that they're killing them from a distance. And then you start killing them at 20 feet and then 15 feet. And then you're machine gunning guys trying to crawl on your tank.
Well,
and then
it starts off really tight because they don't know that they're in there.
Yeah.
And they get a bunch of them all at the start. And then it starts to get closer and closer. They push them back and then it gets closer and closer.
They establish the barrier, but then one by one, as the tank guns fail, as the bullets run out, as the men die, the waves of your inevitable death get closer to the island that is your tank.
And there's a line whenever it's down to just Dawn and Norman.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, I want to surrender. And Dawn says, don't. They'll hurt you bad and they'll kill you bad. Man, like you said, I feel like this is the moment, and there's a step on the hero's journey where they want to go back. It's like the return to who you were at the start of the film, and you get that in that moment from Norman.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, there's no turning back. There's no other option here.
No.
And so I like how you have that and it passes so quickly. And I mean, that's how it is in this whole movie of when your times come. There's nothing around. There's no way getting around it.
And if you want to live, you need to make a choice in a second, like you got to left or right, forward or back.
Yeah. So we're going to lose our entire crew. Norman's going to climb under the tank and he's going to get spotted by and I did not understand this. I didn't understand this the first time I watched it. It took me watching it the second time or third time. I don't know how many times I've seen this movie now. The fact that the German soldier that spots him has no mud on his face, is young, is clean shaven. He's Norman at the start of the movie. And he sees him, and that same innocence that Norman had at the start, that German soldier has.
I don't machine gun dead bodies.
Exactly. And so that German kid doesn't say anything and lets him live. And then the Allied troops are there the next day. Man, what a movie. What a movie. Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Kyle.
Yo.
We were going to do this last week when we mentioned it. Fury or Tombstone?
Oh man. I love me some Tombstone. I got to go with Fury.
You're going with Fury?
I got to go with Fury because, all right, I like it an equal amount for different reasons, but I like it an equal amount, and I think it's just objectively a slightly better movie.
Yeah. I think objectively, I'd say Fury. Subjectively, I'm going to say Tombstone because I feel like I can watch Tombstone more frequently than I can watch Fury. Fury takes a bigger toll on me.
I'm a cold-blooded sociopath apparently because I probably couldn't watch that movie like more than once a day, but I could watch that movie like almost every day and it'd be pretty all right.
It's a great movie. It's a great movie.
I'm also the history nerd in me though, just bugs out at that movie. I'm like, yes, thank you.
All right, let's just stick to it, man.
Yeah.
Most note, my man. You know what time it is. You know what time.
I know what time.
You have no excitement. Come on, Kyle. Get excited.
I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. I'm thinking about the fact that the only tiger tank in the entire world was used in this movie.
That's not
even that's not even my biggest dope.
That's not your biggest dope.
It's not my biggest dope.
All right. Well, okay. I don't know. We may have to take like 15 seconds off of it because I just gave away my biggest dope. So
well, then tell us. Remind me. What's your biggest dope?
Cue a few seconds. Cue a few seconds of the music or the clock sounds. Tick tock, tick tock. Here we are. Biggest dope easily finding out that a real tiger tank was used in the making of this film. Biggest nope. I'm gonna say it's one tiny little shot. Right at the end of the movie when the random SS battalion rally and they're like sitting in formation. They're like, they're running low on supplies. I never liked that. Never liked that scene in the first place. It just seems so out of place.
Fair enough.
Moving on. Your turn, buddy.
All right. Biggest dope. The use of tracers. I mean,
tracers.
I love the tanks, but the fact that you never see tracers in World War II movies, they very much had them. And the craziest part is the Germans did use green tracers and the Allies did use red tracers.
That's wild.
So they even got the colors right. And it adds a Star Wars ungodly hell on earth vibe to the warfare. Biggest nope. Okay. I gotta go with the SS battalion rallying, just like you said. It's just out of place. Yeah. It's just, and I know it's supposed to show, I get what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to show the determination of the SS battalion.
And the passing of time and how small the battalion has become now.
And how many they've killed.
Yeah.
I do think the fact that it's contrasted by the coldness of the sniper when you realize that the machine might be impervious to our bullets, but they now have to come out of the machine.
Yes.
Like that's a great scene.
Second biggest dope would be the overhead shot as you zoom out and you see all the dead soldiers that are surrounding Fury and are just covering Fury.
My second biggest dope is when they liberate the town and they pull the Hitler Youth and the Waffen-SS guy out of the building, and War Daddy goes, "Who's the one killing kids?" And the mayor points to the Waffen-SS and he goes, "Hey, you see that one? The cocksucker with the broken wing? Kill him." And they go, "Okay." The thing that makes that the second most dope is that the guy says, "All right, Angel, give it to him." The Angel of Death kills that SS officer in the middle of the street.
And that's the same guy who gets Norman out of the tank.
Yep.
It's the same one. I never realized his name was Angel, but I did make that correlation. It's the same one who gets Norman out of the tank at the end.
Mm-hmm. Woo! And the scene where the SS officer looks the guy who's about to kill him dead in the eye, and there's nothing there. Like he challenges him to kill him with his gaze. And the guy says, "All right."
Propaganda and brainwashing is a hell of a thing, man.
Yes, it is.
All right, so Kyle, next week, season finale, season 2.
Oh man,
twice as big, twice as strong, twice as girthy.
Jesus actual Christ.
What are we gonna do next week, man? What's our finale?
We're going to do burn, 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 The Mummy.
The Mummy.
Even though I think
the soundtrack, I wouldn't know what I didn't know if that was the soundtrack.
It almost was, but then I think I changed it into Last of the Mohicans somehow. So I apologize for that. But it's The Mummy. We're doing The Mummy.
It's Brendan Fraser in his prime.
Brendan Fraser
being Mr. Hollywood. I think that's it. Get out of here. Let's go. Let's bedtime, bro.
And roll the music.
And roll music. And fade away.
And then the music goes or something like that.
Something along those lines. I don't know exactly.
I'll be real, dude. We babble so much over that music. Even I turned it off, and I listened to him to make sure I hear the final product. And I'm like, "There's the music.
There's
time
like
to go."
15 seconds of music before the end of the podcast.
It's too freaking much.
You're like, I can't listen to these guys anymore.
Can't do it.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye, folks.